Hey friend, and welcome to the Camera Brave Show. My name's Marissa, and I help people fearlessly create content and find their own beautiful voice. In this show, we talk all about strategy, mindset, and confidence, not to mention the power of storytelling through my personal favorite thing, video. Thank you so much for joining me. Let's dive right in. Hello, friend, and welcome back to another episode of the Camera Brave Show. My name's Marissa. I'm your video marketing coach, teaching you how to build your confidence on camera and take stunning video. This is episode number 37, and today we are talking all about how to batch create your content, my best tips for doing this, and the serious benefits of batch creating content. Before I dive on in, would you please do me a quick favor and go over to Apple Podcast and write us a quick review? It would be so seriously helpful. I love reading these reviews and seeing the ratings just continue to grow. It makes me so excited to see something that I've put so much work into start to get the numbers and start to actually spread and affect more people and help more people grow their confidence and tackle this massive hurdle of video. So if you would please just take a moment of your time and go rate the show and write us a review. If you're listening and enjoying it, I would be so deeply appreciative. Alrighty, let's dive on into batch creating content. As always, this episode is inspired by something that very recently happened to me. That's pretty much how I pick these topics for the show. I talk about things that are super relevant to me and that are happening in real time. So at the time that I'm recording this, I literally just finished recording my most recent training for the Camera Brave Club. So that is my monthly coaching group where I teach entrepreneurs how to take videos mostly for social media. However, this training, I talk about Zoom because there are actually a lot of things that you can use Zoom for to monetize your coaching skills through courses, through calls, through memberships, yada, yada, yada. So that's why we actually talked about Zoom this month. However, I just recorded my training. So I am batch creating content today. So I thought, what better than to talk about than the benefits of batch creating content and some tips that I have, and to find the right equation for you. Because in truth, it is kind of a balancing act to be able to successfully create content that's still high quality, like where you're still here and present and you have energy and not just cranking out a bunch of like quantity over quality. No, I'm talking about how to still keep your quality in your videos, but be able to batch create them. Now, if you're hearing me say batch create content, you're like, girl, I don't know what that is. Listen, batch creating is just the term used when you're creating a bunch of content all in one sitting, whether it's photos or videos or both. And these are photos and videos that you could continue to post for the entire month or the entire week, or you can mix and match them and use one this week, and then a few weeks later, you use a very similar image that you took at this time. So you're creating a bunch of content all at once. Now, if you're thinking that sounds really tiring, listen, it can be, but if you do it correctly, it can be so useful to you as a busy entrepreneur. It can be so valuable to be able to have just this library of content at your own fingertips where everything looks good. It's not like slapped together like, oh, I don't have a photo for that. Let me take a quick selfie. In this format, you're able to present your photos and videos and take them at their highest quality, and you're able to take them in bulk so that way you always have some on deck. One example of this would be if you were going to batch create some reels for Instagram. Say you have 4 different reel ideas and you're going to record all 4 of those reels, and then those are your reels that you post for the next 2 weeks. Say you post, 2 reels a week. Then you're able to take those 30 minutes, 45 minutes, however long it may take you to do those reels, and create 2 full weeks of content to where you don't even have to think about Instagram reels until it's time to do it again. So that is batching content in a nutshell. You can do photo form, video form, or I always do both because because the point of batch creating content is to maximize your efforts. So you're taking the same amount of time, concentrating that time and focusing into creating video and photo, and then you're able to use those for like weeks and weeks. So batch creating content is so, so valuable. If you're a busy business owner, not necessarily a content creator who's paid to create content, like, no, we have so many things that we're doing in our business. We have so many priorities, and our content can get pushed to the back burner. I know our own personal accounts are the ones that start to kind of suffer when things get busy. So if you can keep this library of videos and photos and start to systemize your process, it's going to seriously help you out with creating content. Now, some of the pros and the benefits of batch creating content. You get camera ready once. I am camera ready right now. So I took my Zoom recording for the month of March, and I did my whole training that it's going to be released inside of my private coaching group. I'm now doing my podcast episode. And after this, I'm going to do some reels, and you bet your bottom dollar, I'm going to take a bunch of photos also to be used for other social media posts. So I am camera ready, and I am using the 20 minutes I took to put my makeup on to continue to create content. So that way I'm not having to spend 20 minutes yesterday and tomorrow because I didn't maximize my efforts today. So getting camera ready once, huge benefit, you guys. And then the next part of that is getting your camera set up. You can set it and forget it. So my setup, it's not crazy. I just drag out this big boy. I get my lighting right. I get my framing right. But when I'm batch creating content, I only have to do that once. So I set it up for my Zoom training that I recorded, an hour and a half ago, and I recorded. Took a little break, got some fresh coffee, a little snack, and now I'm recording again. My setup is already good to go. My face is already good to go. So it's really about maximizing. And then the third biggest pro is that you are physically, like the space, your camera setup is good to go. You've done your actual presentation work on yourself, whether it's your makeup, your hair, whatever you do to personally get camera ready. Last, but probably the most important, is you get mentally in the zone of creating content. You mentally are in the driver's seat of being a creator, of getting this visual kind of inspiration and getting these ideas. Your mindset is, think of it like an oven. You've already preheated that oven when you've prepared your content. So now you're like warmed up and ready to go. Like you can just keep throwing things in that oven because it's already got that energy. It's already got the heat. It's already ready to go. So when you get mentally to a place where you're able to do that, then it's easier to just continue creating and almost like run down the line of what needs to get done. Now, there is a way to systemize this and maximize it and do it just the best way possible. So that way you do not burn out, because the only con to batch creating content is that it can be a little tiring. It can kind of leave you with a little bit of fatigue once you've done it to the extent that I'll do it. Sometimes when I'm done, I'm like, oh, I'm not smiling for the next several minutes. Because my face will hurt from smiling, and not fake cheese smiling, but just, expressing and talking. And I'll just be like, I can't listen to the sound of my own voice for quite a while. So, I mean, it does take a little bit from you, but when you're able to get your system going and to use these tips that I'm about to go over, then it can be so useful to you. So the first thing to keep in mind when you're going to batch create content is to build your own process as you go. You do not need to listen to what someone else does and what works for them on their content creation batching day and feel like, oh, that's too much. That would be really taxing for me. I can't do it. Listen, you need to build this as you go. Start with one piece of content and then add from there. Do what works for you. There are a lot of proficient podcast hosts that batch create podcast episodes. This is episode number 37. I have never batch created podcast episodes. Okay, maybe once. I think once I recorded 2 podcast episodes in one day, and I was not happy with the quality of those episodes. I felt like it was too much mentally to get into the zone of podcasting and be able to deliver like that back to back. So the next time that I needed to batch my episodes, I did them back to back consecutive days. So this meant I did have to get camera ready 2 days in a row, but I was so much happier with the content as opposed to when I tried to create 2 in the same day. So it really comes down to learning what's going to work for you and then building that up as you go. So you don't have to plan to take like 30 days of reels in one sitting, but you can plan to try to take 2 reels for the week. And then once you do that, the next time you can create reels for 2 weeks and get 4 reels done. So you can build on it as you go. I'm now in a place where I can record the training for the Camera Brave Club and then come over here and record a podcast episode. That is fine. I think it's because I'm using 2 different sides of my brain, if that makes sense. Like one side is the step-by-step, this is how you do this. And then the other one is more talking about mindset or a system. So since they're in those 2 different sort of categories, my brain is able to handle them both. I don't know if that reasoning makes any sense, but when it comes to the trainings, it's different because it's a process that I've already flushed out. I can record multiple trainings back to back and be fine. So you'll really just need to learn what's going to work for you and not feel like you have to conform to anyone else's system. Just because so-and-so can create 5 podcast episodes in one day, like, wow, I wish I could do that. But you know what? That's not for me. Maybe one day it will be. So learning your capacity and then understanding that this is not an everyday thing. You don't have to do this every day. You can do this once a week. You could do this twice a week. You could do it once a month if that's all you have the time for. So understand that it requires you to push yourself to some extent, but it's not a daily activity. Batch creating content is not meant to be done every day. That'd just be creating content. If you're going to just create every day, then you don't need to batch, just create every single day. But the point of batch creating is to kind of push yourself when you're in that creating space. So that way you can free up your time later down the road. And it's like you're maximizing your efforts while you're already camera ready and while you're already set up and creating as much content as you can and pushing yourself a little bit to just have the most at your fingertips and then releasing it as time goes on. Okay, my next tip to you is to have your content ready. Have your shot list, if you will. So if you're going to make 4 reels, have your audio sounds already saved. Know what type of content you're going to need to film for each reel. So preparing your content, having everything ready to go. That way you can maximize what you're doing in that specific time and not have to switch back and forth. Like you can get in your zone, brainstorm and prepare, then get in your zone, create your content. The next tip I have for you is to create a timeline. Give yourself a loose timeline of when these videos or photos should be done. Meaning, I knew when I got up this morning, I gave myself around an hour to record my training. Now, it did take significantly longer than that because I was using a brand new platform to record this video. I normally record all my content through Zoom. However, in order to do a tutorial on Zoom and to show what Zoom can do, I had to use Loom. So I set a timeline for myself of, okay, I'll spend 1 hour on this training. And I went over, but that was okay because I had it in my mind that it would take around an hour, but it wasn't a super strict deadline. I knew around the time I wanted to spend, but I let it be flexible. So create these sort of flexible timelines to keep yourself on track and to not spend 3 hours on reels. The key to not spending a ton of time in one particular area is to simply set your deadline and to know, okay, this assignment gets 1 hour. I've got 1 hour. I'm going to create as many reels as possible. And then I'm moving on to the next thing. Set a timeline for yourself. My next tip is to do some wardrobe changes. So that way you can look like you've taken content over a variety of days. So that can be as simple as throwing on a blazer or a jacket or just changing your top. It doesn't have to be some crazy, runway style wardrobe change, but switching your outfits can let you maximize that content a little bit further. And it looks like it was taken over multiple days. My next tip for you is if you are going to do photos or videos and batch create content, consider doing the other also. Consider doing them both. Whenever I do video, even if I feel like I'm good on photos, I have a good like supply of photos kind of in the bank ready to go, I still make myself take at least a couple of images every time, because then you just have more options. Then you even have the option to create your thumbnails and your cover images. Say if you want to do like cover art for your Instagram reels, or if you need to create a thumbnail for your YouTube video, always just push yourself to take a couple of photos when you're doing your video creating content. And likewise, if you're going to do photos and do a whole photo shoot, why not set aside some time to create a little Instagram reel at that time? So if you're doing one, do the other. You owe it to yourself, maximizing your efforts. That's what batch creating content is. So my last two tips really coincide with creating a system that works for you. Use your schedule to your advantage. My schedule used to be Thursdays were my content creation day. Thursdays, I would do podcast episodes. I would do my reels. I would do lives. I would do photos. However, when I opened up the Camera Brave Club and started incorporating coaching calls, those were all done on Tuesdays. And that was intentional because Thursday was my content creation day. So Tuesdays became the day where that group was my number one priority, meaning when we do Q&A calls, those are on Tuesdays. So that made Tuesdays another day of the week that I needed to be camera ready, which also opened up my schedule to, okay, if I have something come up on a Thursday, I can also record content on a Tuesday. So I am using my schedule to be able to fill in the content where it already makes sense and where I'm already camera ready. My setup's already good to go, and I'm in the mindset of coaching and teaching. And then the last tip that I have is assigning your days. How I just mentioned, Thursdays are my content days and Tuesdays are my club days. I would pick one day of the week that you create your content. Does that mean you have to spend all day creating content? No, you can take 1 hour out of that one day of the week and create content. But assign that day, whether it's a Wednesday, whether it's a Friday, whether it's a Monday, Saturday, Sunday, pick the day. And then set aside 1 hour. Doesn't have to be the same hour every week if your schedule changes, but 1 hour to get some content done. I personally recommend creating something that you can build upon. I started the Camera Brave show not because I thought I was born to be a podcast host or because I thought that I had just so much to share. I created this podcast because of advice from Amy Porterfield, who, if you're not familiar with her, she is a marketing expert. Her company does like multi-millions of dollars every year. She is very inspirational. I very much enjoy watching her. She has her own podcast called Something Marketing Made Easy, I think. If you type in Amy Porterfield, you'll find her. She's very well known. I was listening to one of her podcast episodes when I was first starting my business, and she said, one piece of advice that I would give to anyone just starting out is to create something once a week consistently, whether it's a podcast, a blog, a series on YouTube, creating something that you can build upon. She said that she had watched her peers accelerate faster in their field because they had started creating the content before they felt that they'd made it or that their business was set or that they had systems in place. They started the content a year before any of that ever happened. And she said that she wished she had done the same. So that is my advice to you. If you're going to put in the work to do something every single week, make it something that you enjoy and something that you can build upon and continue to release content. Like consider calling it a show, consider calling it a series or something like that. Something of that nature. If you are looking for that podcast episode, you can go find the Amy Porterfield show. And then it was her episode talking about like things I wish I knew from day one, or my advice to people just starting. It was some sort of episode geared specifically towards people just starting their business. And that was my inspiration of, you know what, maybe a podcast doesn't make sense right now, but it feels like the next thing for me. It feels like I could really talk a lot about mindset and energy, and I could really use a podcast to encourage people that feel so stuck or that just need a little bit of understanding, like someone who can see them and see that they're scared to take video and understand that there are serious mental blocks that get in the way, that it's not in your head and it's not that you're not good enough. It's really just all of these things that we tell ourselves. So I knew that I had the content to craft a show around that. And that is what inspired the Camera Brave show. You guys, there are some people inside of my coaching group that have become absolute batch creating rock stars. Now, I'm still working on my ability to batch create, but there are a couple of girls in this group that will create like 5 or 6 reels at a time. And I'm like, yes, that's great. I hope to get there one day, but start with a system that works for you. If you enjoyed this episode, if you know a rock star batch content creator, would you please do me the honor of sending this to them? You can always screenshot it and tag me in it on Instagram if you enjoyed it yourself, or maybe it made you realize, you know what, she's right. I just need an hour a week. I just need to set aside a little bit of time to be able to create my content. Thank you so much for joining me today, friends. As always, you can find me over at Camera Brave on Facebook, Instagram, and most recently, TikTok. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see you next time on the Camera Brave Show.